Hello, this is Anna Amelia from Northeast Animal Rights, and today we're delighted to welcome along Gary Webster, who is an actor, a well-known actor and a vegan and sentient being activist. Some of you will know him from lots of things on TV, Minder, Family Affairs, Eastenders, The Bill, all sorts of other things as well. So welcome, Gary, and thank you very much for coming along today to do our Saturday Spotlight interview.
Thank you very much for the invite, Anne. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So first of all, we're going to go straight into which is the standard question for us. What's your vegan journey, please?
My vegan journey really is, I was a meat eater for many, many years as a child and during my 20s and 30s. And then I met my wife, Wendy Turner Webster, who, is countrywide known for her fight for animal welfare and vegan rights and being a highly prominent vegan. And as time went on in our relationship, I listened to the arguments and I looked at, how much she was dedicated, how passionate she was about that. And I just thought as a partner, and then subsequently her husband, I couldn't really justify my love of meat against her love of veganism and animal welfare. So I became a vegetarian, found it difficult to give up cheese and eggs, etc., but not necessarily the meat side. And then 2-3 years ago, I went for the vegan January, and haven't looked back. So I've been a vegan, full vegan for like 2 or 3 years now, 3 years I think, and I feel more power to our hand for doing it. And I think it's coincided with an explosion of corporate industry realizing that maybe plant-based food is the way to go for planetary reasons, for health reasons. So there's been no better time to become a vegan, I believe.
Yeah. It's a very valid point about being a really, really good time, because I suppose those like Wendy, who was an old school vegan, and people like Julie, who you both know very well, they've been vegan for a long, long time when it was really, really difficult to be vegan. But I think that the reasons not to be vegan now are increasingly sort of weakening because it is plant-based food is so accessible now.
Yes, I agree. I mean, when we first were dating, you go into Tesco, Sainsbury's, whatever, you want to shop at Lidl, and there would be one small freezer section of Linda McCartney sausages. And now you go there and there's whole, aisles of plant-based food and sections and all that. And we always discuss this, Wendy and I, and we said as soon as the big industry see that there's money in it, then they'll get involved. So it's not the best way to go about it. I don't think it's necessarily ethically minded. Yeah. There may be some in there that are, but I think that however it's come about, it's good. And the last sort of piece of the puzzle was to convince that cliched male, that who would have his full English on a Sunday morning or whatever, that you can do all of that, but you can actually replace sausages, bacon, burgers with a texturally and taste-wise a decent equivalent. And I think that's where we're at now, which is great news.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on a couple of things there. I mean, you talked about the ethics of companies who essentially are greenwashing. They're kind of taking our green pound. But I think that's not necessarily always a bad thing. I mean, obviously, a lot of those companies are doing it purely from a business point of view. But conversely, it shows that the money is out there because the demand is there. So if the demand is there, and if we obviously continue to buy all these vegan products, the plant-based products anyway, food is obviously the main concern for anybody transitioning into a new lifestyle. So if the food part of it is sorted, they will then open the eyes into other areas of animal cruelty, like the vivisection, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, as long as the corporates aren't sort of deforesting everywhere and doing it as they've done for the meat industry, that has to be ethically done to grow plant-based substitutes foods for them to create into their burgers, etc. But yeah, I think, if once you kind of tell people that it's an acceptable thing, veganism, and it's not, and I think along with the allergies and there's so many other things that one has to be aware of. Yeah. And I think people are becoming aware of the influence that mass farm industry has on the planet, etc. Yeah. And yes, it's that final little piece of the puzzle again of saying that, listen, if we believe then that animals shouldn't necessarily be slaughtered, then we can't also test on them. Yeah. We can't, because as we advance technically, technologically, that, you know, we realize that actually working on human cells is far more beneficial than working on a pig cell or a mouse cell. So we have this thing, I mean, we get knocks on the door from charities, you know, and of course you don't want to give to the charity, but we just say, let's just check whether you still test on animals. And sometimes when you find out they do, it's quite a shock to the people, usually students or people who have the best, the best intentions, that they realize that the charity they're collecting for and lobbying on behalf of people's doors actually still do test on animals. And it's quite an interesting to have a conversation then that they didn't realize, you know. And I think once we get over that barrier, and I think that's coming as well, you know, then we began in a better direction.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the couple of things you touched on there, I mean, talking about the vivisection part of it, I mean, it's one of those things which is just absolutely abhorrent. It's so unnecessary. And it's locked away for a good reason. It's the same as slaughterhouses. Everything's behind closed doors, so people don't see what's happening. And I think if the majority of the public actually were confronted, you know, with the cruelties going on all the time in their name, and you know, presumably in the name of progress, what they're saying, but actually it isn't really, because we know there are better ways now. You also mentioned the taste. You can have like a full English breakfast with all the textures and the tastes and everything.
Yes.
A lot of people say to us, you know, do you miss bacon? Do you miss this? Do you miss the other? And we say that actually we didn't become vegan because, you know, we don't like the taste of meat, because it's just because we don't like what happens to the animals. So you can have vegans. I mean, my husband loves he loves all the substitutes, the bacons, the sausages and everything. I don't. I'm more of an old school vegan, but I've never kind of really had any of those. But it doesn't really matter, you know. It doesn't really matter because it's the same endpoint.
Well, I think you know, we will evolve, and as the younger generation becomes far more aware of veganism and they're far more dedicated to that plant-based diet and saving the planet than, you know, some of the older generation of this country and the world are. That, you know, that your taste kind of reconfigurates, you know. So and also, I mean, it's the same as, will it be as harmful for you as eating a piece of red meat or eating a piece of red plant? Now, all those things. So we're going to have to change in some way a lot of our normal practices that we've done over the last 100, 200, 300 years, not only to save ourselves, but to save the planet as well. So, but I think that transition is happening. I just think it's very difficult for some of the old school to let go of it, you know. And I mean, I was fortunate. People say, "Oh, but don't you miss your?" I mean, you're from the Northeast. I've had friends from the Northeast and all that, and the North in general, and even some, you know, down south. And they go, "But what about your mum's Sunday roast? How can you do without this and that and all that?" My mum was an awful cook. So I never missed that, you know. I never missed that idea, this sort of kind of ideal that, you know, how could the last thing to give up is the Sunday roast. Our Sunday roasts were awful. So I've never missed meat as a kind of real pleasure, and, you know, because I wasn't brought up that way, you know. My mum was, you know, burn it to a crisp and then it's well done and then you can eat it. So I never had that burden on my shoulder.
Actually, you know, that's kind of like ringing true with me as well, because one of the reasons I was kind of awkward with the food in the first place was because my mum was exactly the same with the Sunday roast. It was kind of chunks of meat just thrown on the plate, you know, and you couldn't even tell what it was half the time.
No.
So a lot of me was kind of like, this looks awful, it tastes awful, why am I even eating it? And then you kind of like look into where it comes from, you know.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
So when did you decide to get active? I mean, you're saying that you're relatively new vegan in terms of like 2 to 3 years. So you're kind of like, you're doing obviously things with Wendy now, and you're promoting animal rights. So what was the point where you decided I need to do more?
Well, mainly through Wendy, you know, on the animal side. I think I've always been quite politically aware, you know, tried to have a social conscience about, you know, what should happen, what to the right, you know, about understanding that, you know, even when you're being quite successful or I'm working and all that, there's a whole, you know, there's a whole other world out there sometimes. It's difficult, makes it very difficult for people to actually survive out there. And part of that is about the welfare of people and animals, and everything's together, you know. It's how we treat every part of our society, sentient being, animals being part of that sentient being arena. And her dedication, you know, it's just a natural progression. I found that, you know, whereas she's vocal, much more vocal, but I can stand with her and add my two penneth, you know, if it helps, to say that, you know, but we're not here for shoving it down people's throat. People ultimately have got to find it, but you've got to give them the full information. And so much of the time, as you well know, they're not given the full information, is what you were saying. So if someone says, oh, well, that's chicken on my plate, that's fine. But if they knew how the chicken was farmed and how they were treated and how they're, you know, in the slaughterhouses, they might not be so willing to eat it, you know. I think if you can touch those nerves, you're not going to change everyone, you know, like you're not going to change, you know, everyone in every aspect of life. It's an ideal, but if we can change 95%, we've done a great job in the last, you know, 50, 60 years.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. It is about education. I think education is probably it's a slower route, but it's actually the one which will stick. We always say that it's the one which will stick, because you're giving people the information to kind of go away and process, and then they will come to their own decision. And mostly that decision is it's the right thing to do. We did a zoo awareness outreach this weekend, and a lot of people were kind of talking about the conservation con. They were saying, oh, zoos do lots of work for conservation, but when they actually look at the figures in terms of the good it does to the species, you know, kind of like the breeding these species, you know, they're not releasing them to the wild, and people kind of realise that actually they are being conned, they're not being given all of the information.
Sure, education is everything, and it's you know, it will change. It will change. You know, it can't change overnight, though. Nothing can. I mean, the Me Too movement, you know, Black Lives Matter and all that. These are movements that are happening worldwide, and it will be. I think the process will be fast, quicker than it has been, but it won't be overnight. And I think everyone aware of that. And I think coupling under animal rights as well into that, and all, you know, all minority and diversity rights and gender rights, LGBTQ, etc. You know, but the movement is moving. It's going forward. The process is going forward, and it's going forward with a weight of our youth behind it that I think will then make it unstoppable. Whereas before, I think when it fits and starts, and then it would just kind of regress and everyone be happy. I don't think people are going to be happy. They're not going to be happy with the equilibrium. They want change. And I think that governments like Putin's butchery that he's doing now, and this government and Trump getting in power, I think they're the last bastions of that old class that are trying to cling on to what they believed was what their youth and future was about. It's changing, you know, and I don't think it can be stopped now.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm very much a positive person, because I'm always sort of like looking at, rather than look at how far we've got left to go, look at how far we've come.
Oh, we've come. Oh,
absolutely. We've come really, really far. I mean, I know veganism has been around for, you know, thousands of years, but in its form, like now, it's only been around since 1944. But I feel as if we've made so much progress in the last, you know, 10 years, 5 years, and maybe kind of thinking ahead in 5 years' time where we'll be. It's really, really exciting.
It's like all aspects of technology and advancement. You know, if you're in the medical profession, you could have had something 5 years ago, and they've now found more cures for it or better treatment of it and all that. Everything progresses. And I think, you know, anyone who's interested in the care of and love and support of community across the board, animal or human, that progression will continue to happen, you know. And ultimately, in the end, it should make people like us or yourself, or it should make us redundant, because people wake up, you know, all the causes that people fight for, it should be forward. Well, that is not going to stop me from living my life. He's now interested in it, you know. So I move. That's the hope, anyway. Not in my lifetime.
So, how do you promote veganism and animal rights within your work? I mean, obviously, you're an actor and you're going around from different studio to studio to do things. So, do they already know that you're vegan, or do you have to tell them, or how does it kind of, you know, do you make people feel uncomfortable?
No, I think it's. I think it provides discussion. And I think, you know, most places where if I've recently been on tour, if you're at the theatres and if you go out and get your sandwiches, your shopping or whatever, of course, there's many vegan plant-based alternatives now to what people wanted. So all that's good. Within the environs of the acting profession or elsewhere, I think people are surprised when they hear I'm a vegan, because I think whether it's been the roles that I've played or my general manner, coming from London, a bit of a, you know, a lad sort of history or whatever, that they just find that strange that I would be dedicated to a vegan lifestyle. So then that opens up discussion, and then you give them, and if they come up with some of the cliche arguments against them, but you do it with fun and you do it with humor, and you embrace what they might think of you, and then because that's the way they change, and then you get them thinking, well, if he's changed, oh, okay. But, you know, is it embarrassing? You go, and I said, well, once I put tomato sauce on stuff, it's the same everything, you know. So, but in general, no. I mean, Wendy has experienced far more probably aggression against her at times. I'm not physical aggression, but verbal misunderstanding. You know, when we've been out 20 years ago, I said I'm a vegan. I mean, it was a sense that it was almost for a kind of amusement. And then they'd give out the cliche arguments about vegans and all that. And Wendy would never rise to it. She'd just say, and that's why you have to keep your powder dry. They're the very same people 20 years on now that might have had the heart attack and go, oh no, I live a vegan lifestyle now, you know. So it's we've seen the change there, you know, and I think it's because you can go into a restaurant and say, I'm not allergy, I'm, you know, no allergy, I'm this and that. So actually being a vegan is just part of the selection of choice you got. I mean, I find it more interesting when people in a row, you know, a group of people actually go for the big meat option. They're now more isolated than the vegans and the allergies and everything else.
Yeah. I'm just going to pause there for 1 second. Hello there. So sorry, we took a little pause there because we had some IT issues, but we're back online now, and I can see Gary moving around there now perfectly. So great.
Great. Okay. Fantastic.
You just suddenly sprung to life there.
Great.
So we're talking about your work, and about how it starts conversations with people. But if we move into like it being a vegan man now, so do you feel any particular pressure from other men who are not vegan, you know, who see eating animals as being a macho thing to do?
Not really. I don't know. I mean, I think I know within the acting community, not really. No. And with our friends I have outside of it, I think this is the change that I've seen more apparent in the last 5 or 10 years, and certainly in the last 3 years, is that, you know, when companies like Richmond and Tesco's own, all that, they're doing their own sausages, meat-free vegan sausages. I think it's what that's done is punched a hole through that kind of facade of machoism, machismo, to allow the guy who might be thinking about it, the builder or the trucker or whatever, to go play Sunday league football every morning, you know, that kind of, to actually go, oh, well, they look the same, better for me health. They're now allowing, and he might care about animals, but find it difficult to show that's burst the kind of bubble, and it's allowing people to do it. So during lockdown, you know, I mean, just things like lockdown, we would go in, and because things were scarce, all the vegan Richmond sausages would have gone. Yeah. So in a kind of funny roundabout way, in a, you know, a very difficult way, it's kind of probably they haven't gone back. Yeah. So if we move on now, we've seen you, we've seen both you and Wendy doing lives from Beaver in Poland. So can you tell us about what's going on there to support the war effort over there? No, I think we've lost you again. Oh no, you're back. Could you ask that question again? Yeah, sorry, I think the computer just went funny there. So we saw you working in Viva, in Poland alongside Viva. So can you tell us what's going on with the war effort over there? I know it's very, very difficult at the moment. Yeah. I mean, we was inspired to go there because, you know, we was just appalled that one country could attack another European country or something so close to, as we are appalled with what happens in worldwide Syria or Iraq or, and, you know, we had to have a conversation with our children in the 21st century, 2022, to even discuss where a nuclear attack might happen in the UK country and who might get hit. So we was inspired. And so knowing that I couldn't just drop on the ground and start fighting or something, we looked at how we could help both animals and humans. So Viva are doing such fantastic work out there, and Wendy's been a patron since it started. So we got in touch with Juliet, and they were more than happy for us to go out and sort of raise the profile and raise the awareness of what Viva were doing with their fantastic sanctuary in Poland. And then that allowed us to actually do something of worth. We said we just didn't want to take photographs and be, oh, look, here we are. Whilst going back to, so we went to the sanctuary, helped out there for a couple of days, and then we went straight up to the border and delivered some microchips they needed and some other medical provisions for, you know, the pets that were coming across. So we saw it firsthand, that the pets were an integral part of people's families. And so when they grabbed everything, they grabbed the kids, they grabbed themselves, and they grabbed the pets, And of course, the provision of food and medical health care for the animals isn't necessarily high on their agenda. They just wanted to take the pet. So it was great to be able to do something tangible and help, and to do our little bit. If it wasn't, defending the country, it was defending the people of the country, to make that process of actually being ousted by a tyrant, by a dictator, at least alleviate some of the worries they might have about, where do we get food from? The dog's very hungry, it's whining, what can we do, or the dog or the cat or whatever. So, we've gone through nothing comparable to what's happening to the people of Ukraine, but we've been through some tough times, and people helped us who we didn't think would help us, or had no idea they could help us. And so we don't forget that, so hopefully we helped in some way, if it gave some people, inspiration, that people are willing to travel and help. So that's why we did it. And, we do it again.
So what would you say is the best way to help the animals and the families with animals over there? Is it to donate like Viva Poland?
Yeah, I think it is to donate to organisations like Viva, which you can go onto their website and find out all the details, and to other, charities like Paws to Rescue, where we got our beautiful dog Newt from, who are also working very hard, more at the Romanian border, to rescue dogs, and also just in general, the food stuff, there's, donations, because there's so many refugees and there's so many animals attached to refugees, that those donations go quickly, and there's not that much money swilling around for that. So to have that for free is, it's a can of dog food, 2 cans of dog food. I know it's tough here, very tough here at the moment, but it would be nice to think that if anything, we was in a similar situation, which we've experienced in a sort of certain way, that people would do the same for us, and certainly as a country, and the Brits are usually good at that, contrary to the government. Right.
That's another story altogether, isn't it? It's kind of, I was just thinking then when you were talking about the donations, because and how generous the British people are in any situation, no matter how little they have, they will give. We currently have an ongoing campaign to a local food bank, so we arrange collections of plant-based food donations. But we've also been doing that for Ukraine as well. So rather than halving what people are given, people are actually doubling up what they're given. And you kind of think that in this day and age, we shouldn't have food banks. It's just food banks have become the norm.
In this day and age, in this country, in the 5th richest GDP in the world, it's disgusting.
Oh, it's outrageous. It's
abhorrent.
Yeah.
We should be on the streets rioting. It's outrageous.
Yeah.
And yet this government passed it off as the norm.
It's the norm.
And they've passed it off as the norm for the last 10 years. And it is absolutely disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's I mean, a civilization sort of, one of the richest countries in the world, and we are living with food banks. But I mean, it was great to watch you both in, and Juliet as well, in Viva, when we saw the little live
Yeah,
videos.
sure.
They kept on popping up on the screen, and I was like, oh, they're there. It's really, really good to watch, because it was like you're the man on the spot. Rather than, like you said, photographs of you kind of posing with different things, seeing you getting stuck in. It was really, really good.
Yeah, good.
Thank you very much for doing that. It was really useful for all of us to watch.
Good.
So I know you do other charities as well. You support human charities. So would you like to tell us about those ones you support?
Well, we're part of the Humane Research Trust, which is working on human cells, etc., etc. Basically, we're wherever we feel. And then we work for a charity called SOS Silence of Suicide, which Michael Mansfield and his wife Yvette Greenaway set up due to, unfortunately, Michael's daughter committing suicide, and understanding the tragedy and the processes that might happen before someone gets to that point, and trying to intervene before they get to that point. And Michael was a massive supporter, is a massive supporter of Viva. So Wendy and Michael always used to do a speech every year at the Viva annual sort of Christmas do. And so we've known them for many years. And and it's really just to try and create safe spaces for people in every work area, that, if you're feeling down and you're feeling not good about yourself, that you can go to a place at your workplace and for an hour talk about it, and someone will be feeling the same, and then we can support each other, because these are fundamentals that we should be doing as a society that have been lost. They're like almost rewards. They're like luxuries. The treatment of animals. Your campaign is like a luxury. The fact that we haven't got safe spaces for people with mental health, certainly after lockdown, is so high on the agenda, and yet people have to fight and raise money and all that. This should be a God-given thing, and I'm an atheist. It should be an atheistic given thing, if that's the word. As what we pay our taxes for. We don't pay our taxes to be shuffled off to some publican to produce, testing kits. We pay our taxes for the care of people and animals in this country. And I think, the older I get, the more passionate I get. Because it's unacceptable.
Yeah, I think probably as well. I think with you being vegan sort of like 3 years or so, I think it's probably the time when you're most passionate, because you kind of had the last few years kind of like taking in all the information, and now you're channeling it into something which is positive and where you can make change.
Well, I think this is. I think is that there's a fracture, a displacement between the people who are running countries and the people who live in the countries. I mean, I have two sons, 22 and 19, and their outlook on life and their attitude and their passion and their direction of life completely contravenes what they're being governed like. So the governments are more and more out of touch. The fact that I know Biden's in now, but that Trump was in, that is so fractured from, I think, what the people of America wanted, although they voted, and with Putin and and what's happening in France with Le Pen and all this. And I think the youth are looking at all this and going, no, this is not for us. And we want a different way. We want a different direction. And I think it's
I think we've lost you again.
You're back.
I think we both froze at the same time there.
Oh, okay, cool. We're back. We're alive again. We should be singing, isn't there? That song, that musical Frozen.
It's funny. I mean, the thing about the Zoom meeting, it's been great, because I would never have had the opportunity to talk to you normally, because obviously face to face, it's just so far away. But the downside of it is when the technology doesn't work, it's a pain.
A nightmare for an actor. It's a nightmare. But actors are wonderful. You know, you communicate by visuals,
Yeah.
looking, not frozen, stop inside.
So anyway, so what's next for you then? You seem to be very, very busy.
Yeah, well, no, we're not too bad. We just finished the tour of the Cat and the Canary for Bill Kenwright Limited, which was great, which was basically it was over 2 years during lockdown, on, off, on, off. I just did a wonderful thing at the Theatre Royal Windsor, called Windsor on Air, and we did a week sort of performing the play Pygmalion, but a la radio style. So we didn't move it. We just wore tuxedos and the ladies wore ball gowns, and we just read it as it was a 1920s or 30s, 40s radio play from the BBC, which I got to play Alfred Doolittle, which was fantastic. You know, great play, some really wonderful stars, Sue Holderness and John Mickey, etc., Hannah Arterton. And now today I'm going off to do some pickup shots on a film we shot last summer called Dream Hacker, which is a sort of science fiction, dreams, reality thing, which I, with Mark Williams, who's in Father Brown, and Marina Sirtis out of Star Trek, and Molly Hanson, and so it's and David Yip. So there's a great cast, and we just did some pickups, but hopefully that will be released in the new year. Sorry, later on this year. We're in the new year. Later on this year. So you know, some things are happening, which is great. You know, good. I'm lucky to still be working after this long. No one's found me out yet.
I feel the same when I'm doing my activism. Nobody's found me out either.
Yeah, I know. God. When they do, that's it. I'll go back to what my mum always wanted me to be, which was a postman.
Well, it's been absolutely brilliant talking to you today. Thank you so much for giving up your time, particularly when I know you're so busy as well. So say hello to Wendy, and keep on doing what you're doing. It's really, really appreciated. Shining light on the animals, you know, the work with Viva and the work in Poland. And everything you're doing as well. It's been absolutely brilliant talking to you.
That's been a pleasure.
I'm going to sign off now. So this is Anna Amelia from Northeast Animal Rights saying thank you very much to Gary for talking to us today. Bye for now.
Thank you.